We have population growth around 3.2%, still way ahead of GDP growth. Anyways, we have about 10 million children that are out of school, and everybody keeps, I mean, you listen to the conversation we had with Ejikeme at Diamond Bank talking about what kind of future we're preparing for. And when we say, okay, who takes the lead or on whose table does this rest? You take a look at the federal government at the 2018 budget for education this year, 605 billion. Out of that, 435.1 billion going to recurrent. That's a huge chunk of the money. 61.7 billion now going to capital expenditure. And you're wondering, how do we expect to see a turnaround in the education sector that's going to educate these children and bring them, pass them through the system where they're going to come out on the other side of the spectrum and then be qualified for good jobs?
Yeah, I think that's a very big challenge, not only to Nigeria, but for so many developing countries, especially in Africa, that are passing through what we call the demographic transition. You know, because it normally happens as population grows first because of improvement in health situations, sanitation, and all of that. So there is a reduction in the death rate. So the death rate drops, but fertility rate doesn't drop. So people keep having more children. And then, you know, all of a sudden, then we have a population pyramid that's bulging at the seam, so at the base, and that's what you notice in Nigeria. If you look at the population pyramid, where you have the cohorts, you know, population by age and by sex, so you're going to see that we have a preponderant number of a population, you know, below, say, 18 years. I think the average age of a typical Nigerian is actually 18 years. Or lower than that, 15 years according to some estimates. So that means that we have a hugely young population, and then taking care of this population is, in fact, even in the best of times, is a huge challenge. And then for us here in Nigeria, I think education remains the key. But before I go into education, let's even talk about the nature of work and the changing nature of jobs. Yes. Last year, the World Economic Forum came up with the future of jobs, the publication they had last year, where they talked about the fourth industrial revolution and the nature of disruptions that are taking place because of nanotechnology, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and all of that. So that's changed. You know, so many jobs we have today didn't exist some few years ago, and then there were some jobs that were, you know, some in the past, and today they are no more. So the rate at which jobs become obsolete is going to be high, and new jobs will be created, and those new jobs require a high level of skills. Yes. So now that is where we now come back to our education. Even as it is right now, we have education that is completely obsolete in many ways. So yes, the unemployment rate is high in Nigeria, but the unemployability rate is even higher because it's not just that people have certificates, most of them are unemployable. Okay. And this is what most employers of labor will tell you.
I was actually just going to get to that because I think we've come to a point where we have to say that that growth in GDP, economic growth, may not lead to higher job creation. We looked at a survey done, or a study done by PwC that proved that said Nigeria's economy was growing for so many years, but the growth of the number of people joining the labor force was still slow. So how do we build curriculum for Nigerians so that they can actually go through school and not come out and be looking for jobs, so that they can be employed?
Curricula based on our current economic realities, as it were.
Yes, there is something about the educational system. I think we have a systemic problem in the educational sector. It has to do with the institutions, with the people, with the leadership, with the governance, and everything about the educational system in Nigeria is wrong. Okay, it's obsolete. And you see that, you know, manifested in several key aspects of our life in Nigeria anyway. So the people manning that system need to actually have a rethink.
Are we having those conversations?
That's what I don't even know. Because it's not just about drawing budgets and throwing money at the educational sector. We have to look at the people manning the system. Are they really qualified? Okay, do they have the right skills? Because we have skills gap that keep increasing every year. So. And it's not just with the students that are being produced or the people that are coming out of those schools, but their teachers are actually worse. You know, we've seen what happened in Kaduna State recently and everywhere. Okay, so the state of the education. Last year I published an article on my column in the Business Day, Bongo Adi, and I said, a ticking time bomb, the educational sector. So where I looked at all of these issues. So I think the problem is we can't even exaggerate the problem because it's just too big. I don't know where to start.
But where should we? Well, we need to start somewhere. I mean, that's why I started with the budget. I mean, we're still way below UNESCO's recommendation of 26% of annual budgets going to. We know we have competing needs. Looking at the budget, security takes just this very huge chunk, and then there's very little to go around for the rest of the sectors. But I'm thinking at some point we need to decide what's important to us as a nation. Is it going to be education? Because we know education can unlock so many opportunities for the country. But that's why I went back to the question: are we having those conversations?
Now, okay,
who should begin to lead that charge?
My take last year on my publication was education should be privatized. Okay, but when I say that, I mean it attracted a whole lot of criticism from so many people. But they didn't understand that. So if you look at Nigeria, if you look at even every developing country, so privatization seems to be the key to unlocking the human potential for creativity. Okay? So now let's go to the United Kingdom for instance, to Japan. So let me finish that.
Okay. Can you do that in 10 seconds? Because we need to go.
So when you go to these countries, you see that over the past few years, they've tried to privatize so many of their public schools. Not privatize, but commercialize. So that they can make their own funds and pay competitive wages. So if you want to attract the right guys to teach in the schools, you just have to pay competitive salaries.